All right, ZBA, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are opened. Go for it.
Welcome everybody and Happy New Year to the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals for meeting of January 7th, 2025. We have one scheduled public hearing this evening. I'll read it into the record. The applicant is Jessica Houghton at 101 South Forest Street in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-28-9-21.1. The size and location is 47,726 square feet at 101 South Forest Street, Country Club Estates at Montauk, Section 2, lots 21 and 22, map number 5152 in Montauk. The description is to allow a pergola and bench, brick steps, 175 square foot second floor living space and 175 square foot first floor living space to remain and to replace a 532 square foot of deck on a parcel of land containing freshwater wetlands. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the town code, and 5 variances are required for this application. Variances of 37 feet, 62 feet, 70 feet, and 73 feet are required from 255-430 minimum wetland setbacks of the town code to allow a pergola and a bench to remain 63 feet, bricks and steps to remain 38 feet, second floor living space to remain 30 feet, and first floor living space to remain 27 feet from freshwater wetlands, all where a 100-foot setback is required. One variance of 85 feet is required to remove and construct a 523 square foot deck in place 15 feet from freshwater wetlands where a 100-foot is required. Zoning district is B residence zone, X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. And council, do we have proper affidavit of service and posting?
Yes, I reviewed the affidavit of service and posting. Everything appears to be in order and the board has jurisdiction over this hearing.
Thank you. And this is member Johan, you're going to be doing a report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is on, has 2 frontages on both South Forest and South Fox. So I have 2 photos here, and I believe this is South Fox, but this is the posting I'm on. Here I'm on South Forest, and I'm looking west. Give you an idea of the neighborhood a little bit here. I think we're going to be missing a couple of views. Next, please. Here's the second posting. So we have just one on South Fox and one on South Forest, and they were both up and evident and in good shape. Next. Here I am on Fox, and I'm looking, my back would be to the highway, and I'm looking back up to where it tees into South Forest. The board will remember we had immediately, their property immediately to the right here was in front of us, so this neighborhood is somewhat familiar to us. Thank you. Next. I'm looking straight, I'm coming into the driveway of the house. I'm standing with my, probably just about at the edge of the driveway. I'm just walking in. Next. Oh, I've turned around now from there, just to give you an idea of the neighbor. This is directly opposite the driveway. This is the neighbor across the way on the north side of the road. Next. We come in, there's a driveway. The driveway goes straight up towards the south, and then at one point here, there's a spur of it that goes over to the front door that's heading directly east. Next, just give you a lay of the land here. These are stairs that are not in contention tonight, but this is just to get an idea of the house. This is up to the main door on the north side of the house. Next. I'm working my way around the house. I'm on the west side, and I'm going to be walking to the south. Here's a view looking at the house up at, you can see a deck area up above. Next. Now when we get around to the south, what is that, southwest corner, this is a set of stairs that's scheduled to be removed. They're in disrepair now. We're going to get a close-up of them. They lead up to the deck, and they're going to replace them with a smaller set of stairs. You see that on the survey, and I'm sure it'll be discussed tonight. Next. A little bit closer, you can see the condition of the steps there, and it would obviously have needed repair, but they are scheduled to be changed now. So this is part of what's in the TAM as the project that's proposed. Next. I walked up on the deck and I'm looking out. Now, there is that section where you can see a hot tub. That's what's proposed to be removed, and that's going to move us further from the wetland. That's all noted in the TAM. The deck that we're standing on here is to be repaired and to remain. The deck that you see that's gray, out with the white area, obviously, there's irregularly shaped there. There'll be more pictures next. There I am, walked right over to it. So you can kind of see the line of the railing to my right down the lower corner would extend across, and everything beyond that would be removed. Next. I'm looking over the side. I'm looking down at these propane tanks. They happen to be, it's a reference point to know that everything from there back in, the propane tanks have pre-existed, but that is all wetlands from there, from that line back in. Everything is wetlands heading towards Fox here. Next. I've gone up above. There's a spiral staircase that takes you up to our upper deck, and it gives you, this is the a deck above. Part of the area that was closed in is off to the left. I don't know if there's a good picture of it. I'm sorry if there's not, but we'll have that discussion, I'm sure, with the representative. Next. From there, I'm looking down. This is part of what's going to be discussed as well. I'm looking south, and you can see some lawn area. And then you can see an area that's not exactly lawn that has been overcleared, and that's part of it that's in a drainage easement. And I'll get another better photo. Next. There also is down in that lawn area, and I'm looking out towards the wetlands. This is an area of improvement. It's got some Belgian block. It's got some statuary. You see it was cleared. I'd like there to be a question for clarification about how this is going to be revegetated tonight with the representative. Next. From there, I was looking to give you an idea that you can see standing water just beyond that statuary. I'm standing alongside of it. I'm looking down on standing water. So obviously we're right up against the wetlands. It's very wet in here. Next. This is something, again, this out in some Devil's Walking Stick. This is down in the drainage easement, and it's quite a pile of debris. Question for the representative tonight. Obviously, you can't be dumping this brush and leaves down in there. So we'll bring that up tonight. Next. I'm standing there looking back, and I've got my back. I'm standing just about on the line of the easement, and I'm looking back at the house. You see what is cleared and what is lawn. Next. And I put this in because you'll see a flag if you look closely. There's a line of flags right along the edge of the mowed lawn area. There is a notation in the TAM, or on behalf of, rather than that, on Tara Burke's letter to us, that they're going to naturally allow this to revegetate. I believe those are along the line of the drainage easement, and so everything that's been cleared beyond the lawn area is in an easement and will have to be revegetated or grow back depending on their proposal. Next. This is that area of the I'm standing down below the hot tub. All of this is to be pulled out. Right now, currently, the TAM points out that this is 8 feet from the wetlands, and when it's removed, it's going to come back to 15. Next. This is a walkway that goes through the wetlands from the backyard over to South Fox. That's also proposed to be removed. The walkway in its entirety, you can see it's not even passable at this point, but obviously it was used as a shortcut over to another road. Those steps and the walkway is to come out. Next. Is that all I have? Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Tara, how are you, Tara?
Good evening, Tara Burke from Lighthouse Land Planning.
Do you swear firm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good evening. Thank you, Member Johan, for the synopsis and photos. As was stated, 5 variances and a natural resource special permit are required for the application. The existing conditions on site are the same as when the current property owner, who is Jessica Houghton in the audience there, purchased the property in 2001. So there have been no changes to the site since she purchased it. This was all done prior to her ownership.
I'm sorry, what day did you say? Oh.
In 2021, she purchased the property. Yep. She originally came to my office about replacing the deck. And I had said to her, it's in wetland jurisdiction. We need a natural resource special permit. And then upon reviewing the property and the records, we realized there's a bunch more things that are not on the CO that she was not aware of. So we figured we'd bring it all to your attention at once and try to make the best possible remedy for the existing site conditions. as you can see from the site inspection, that rear deck is in a significant state of disrepair. I actually just kind of poked my head under it, and it's scary how it's constructed. I mean, it's literally like a homeowner special, you know, cinder blocks, 2x4s, whatever, shims to get it to work. So she's really genuinely concerned about the structural integrity. She wanted to replace it about 2 years ago when she first came to me. And we said, hang on, let's get through the ZBA and see what we can do. So the 1981 CO had some improvements, you know, not everything. What we figured out was that it's the pergola and the bench, the front brick steps. There was a 170 square foot greenhouse attached to the front, which the surveyor hatched in blue. And then on the second story, there was, it looks like a deck that was converted to living space, which is 175 square feet, right where the words two-story frame dwelling are. We're not even entirely sure what happened, because when you look at the plans that are on file with the building department, they don't match in a lot of ways. And that was very common in the early 1980s. So what we're trying to do is, because they're stock plans, right? It's like, oh, this model or that model. So we knew that those two things are different. So we're trying to get that legalized too, but we're not exactly sure when they were enclosed. So the rear deck, we looked at various aerials. You could see in the TAM, the 1983 aerial shows that shaded portion of the rear deck. The plans that were on file with the building department show sliders in that area. So given the site topography, the sliders are right here. It would have been impossible to get into the house without some sort of elevated surface. Like I said, the 1983 aerial shows the deck, but it didn't have a building permit at that time, so a natural resource special permit wouldn't have been required, but a building permit would have been. So we're here with that. We did notice in the 2001 aerial, the section with the hot tub clearly shows up later. So that got added on at some point. So the proposal is to take off the section with the hot tub, reconstruct the existing deck in a significantly safer manner. It's comprised of railroad ties, all sorts of materials that would never be used today. And then what we are trying to do with that, you saw that really large staircase that comes down right here, and then brick. There's brick and that statue here that was in one of the photos. So we're proposing to remove all of that and then reconfigure the stairs so that they come up as far from the wetlands as possible, to try to keep that deck and any, you know, associated structures as far from the wetland as we can. And we would have gotten in touch with the old owner about the deck, and when it was constructed, she's elderly, she's no longer reachable, so wasn't possible. And yeah, so we're proposing to remove the deck extension, and that will bring it back to 15 feet from the wetlands instead of the 8 that exists. That brick patio will be removed, and we're happy to revegetate that area where the brick patio was, which I'll talk about later, along with a buffer to the wetland as a whole. As far as the increased living space goes, I talked about that already, but it's about 345 square feet. And the sanitary is, I'm sorry, we left it off the initial submission. We hadn't realized that, so I submitted the survey with the sanitary last week. It's in the front, and it's right, so the tank is here, and then there are 5 leaching pools. We would prefer not to upgrade it. It would require significant disturbance to the site. There's all sorts of steps there. We'd have to do tremendous regrading. Because the property is at its clearing limit, there's nowhere to put a new septic that would be further from the wetlands. You've got that, originally I was thinking, oh, maybe in the driveway, but you've got that other wetland on the, the west side of the property. So we'd prefer not to touch the wetland, to touch the sanitary and create more disturbance on site. The improvements requested don't meet the threshold for a sanitary upgrade requirement, and the existing septic is in good working order. As far as the clearing goes, the existing clearing is 21,099, and the town code allows 18,213. It is pre-existing non-conforming. However, we would like to propose a vegetated buffer, and I submitted a survey that shows, Tyler, I don't know if you could put that one up if you have it handy. Thank you. So what we're proposing to do is bring the property back into conformance with the clearing restrictions. That 20-foot wide drainage easement in the rear, that was in some of the photos, that's actually, it's a drainage easement, it's not a scenic easement. So according to the easement language, it doesn't have to be vegetated. But we're proposing to revegetate that area anyway, because it just makes sense. And just as a side note, when she originally came to me, the prior owner had actually cleared off the property down here. And then there was a wood bin here. So she preemptively told her landscapers to stop mowing that rear portion, got rid of the wood bin. We're hoping to let it revegetate naturally. I'm not sure what the dumping of material was, but that clearly can't happen. So that will be something that won't be happening in the future. It's probably from the landscapers. But what our thought was with the revegetation is to give the big chunk in the back, because there's not a lot of lawn. So to try to figure out where we can revegetate that helps the wetlands, but also, gives her some of a yard. We figured we'd do that larger chunk in the back and then do a buffer around the whole side of the wetland there. And also remove that concrete walkway that goes right through the wetland. She has no problem removing that. So with this, it would be around 2,900 square feet, and that would bring it back into the allowable clearing limits. And we think this is a considerable improvement from the existing site conditions and significant benefits for the health of the wetland to have that buffer. As noted, the concrete steps and the walkway are proposed to be removed. The wood storage bin was taken out. And we're happy to revegetate that buffer area where that brick area was, remove the stairs. And then I won't go through the variance standards in detail, but the improvements are consistent with that of the surrounding neighborhood. This is an attempt to legalize existing conditions that were prior to her ownership. The deck was there in 1983. The hot tub deck extension, the path through the wetland, the large deck staircase, the brick patio, and the wood bin are all proposed to be removed. The remaining structures are really the rectangular deck and the two additions, and then the pergola and the brick in front that would just cause a significant disturbance to remove. And we're amenable to putting that revegetated buffer. So if you have any questions.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, good.
Ed?
There was a notation in there about allowing some areas to revegetate naturally. Is that what you're considering is going to happen in the easement in the?
Well, no, we were going to work on a revegetation plan that the planning department would obviously oversee and sign off on. The thought was that area that's allowed to grow back naturally was that wood bin was removed, and we were hoping by the time we got to you, it would have grown in to some extent. But that can certainly be part of the revegetation plan to, add that area in.
Yeah. Okay.
That's in the wetland. So, I think that's got to have wetland.
Some of it was in the wetlands, and some of the area was clearly back in that
the drainage easement.
The drainage easement, And it wasn't clear for me to see where the property line was, but I assumed it was back in there somewhere. It gets very wet right away.
It was flagged at some point in time, but they're probably not there any longer.
Okay. I'm looking in the existing conditions memo in the file. There's a survey attached from 1981. I guess that from when the C of O survey. And you mentioned that there were other structures put in place. This survey from 1981 only shows one on the southwestern corner, the brick, and nothing else. So none of these other things that were done with the permit.
Correct. Like, are you referring to the pergola in the
Everything
front
else.
and the stairs and, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why we're bringing it all to you to legalize it. Yeah.
That's a lot of stuff.
We're trying to bring it into compliance.
We're trying to fix
Yeah.
a problem that has existed for, I mean, the deck has been there for 40 plus years. Most of those improvements, when you look at the aerials, have been there for at least 20 something years. We're just trying to clean it all up.
Yeah.
And reconstruct a really unsafe deck.
It's also large variances.
Well, the alternative is she can't get into the house. So it's, I mean, the sliders are up at the house level. The deck brings you up to the entry to the house. So there's no
That's
way.
the only entry to the house is up on that deck?
Oh, no, there's another entry,
Oh.
but those sliders were on the original building plans. Those have always existed. So when that deck came into construction was sometime between the 1981 CO and 1983 when it's shown in the aerial.
I guess my other concern is about the septic. I mean, I know you don't want to disturb a lot now, but at some point in time, it may be that a septic system is required.
That's correct.
So you don't want to do it now, though.
Don't want to do it now. No, it would
But it
be
does look
huge
like
disturbance. And
possibly-
it comes down to finances too. I
Mhm.
mean, she didn't know when she bought this that there were all of these issues. The revegetation is almost 3,000 square feet, which is not nothing financially. You know, the deck is completely compromised. So it's not really a question of, you know, if you had, you know, if you could do everything you could do, it's just coming down to what is feasible for the property owner.
Your comment just now was that the aerial photo shows that deck in 83.
That's correct. And that's in the existing conditions memo from the planning department. And it's also in my resubmission, which is prior to natural resource special permit jurisdiction.
Any other questions?
Just to clarify too, none of the work we're discussing was done by the current owner.
That is correct.
So it all somehow predates at least 21.
Which I guess is why the new legislation, right, requires you to get an updated CO within 6 months of sale. So
Yeah.
hopefully you'll be seeing less situations like this one.
Or more.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, any other questions?
I do not have any.
Great, we'll ask Ryan to come up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you, Ryan?
Doing well. Good evening, board. Happy New Year. Ryan Schlichting from the Planning Department.
Ryan, do you swear firm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So Tara covered a majority of the application, but just a couple more things I wanted to touch on. The parcel does contain extensive wetlands and covers a majority of the east side of the property. This is a part of Montauk that is characterized by a complex wetland system that is part of the Lake Montauk watershed. Many of the freshwater wetlands in this area have been filled, ditched, and culverted in conjunction with the construction of roads and residential improvements. The wetlands are biologically diverse, act as valuable wildlife habitat, and serve as a buffer to Lake Montauk. So, as we talked about before, I think an important thing to touch on is the clearing. It is pre-existing non-conforming at 21,000. And to bring it into conformity would be 18,213 square feet. We are happy to work with Tara and the applicant to making a formal revegetation plan for the property. It is a little unclear as to when exactly all of these improvements were made. Besides the deck, everything was made after 1983 in that aerial, which is the pergola and bench, the brick steps, the second and first floor improvements. But as Tara said, the deck is in between 1981 and 1983 from the CO and that most recent aerial that we have. And other than that, I can answer any of the questions that you guys have.
Any questions for Ryan?
I have no questions.
I'm fine, thank you.
One quick one. So there's a drainage easement on the property, but there's no scenic easement on the property at
Just
all?
the drainage easement.
Okay. Would it be worthwhile to have a scenic easement over the wetlands?
I don't see why not. That is something that I can talk about within the planning department and with Tara. As for also revegetating in that drainage easement, as she
Right. yeah,
proposed,
thank you.
I think it is something that is possible.
And how about our septic system? Where, do you see anywhere where a septic system could go on this property?
So I do think that the wetlands to the west of the property do make it a little difficult as to finding a more sufficient spot. The only thing that I would have to say about it is how old the septic system is. In the future, it may need to be changed, but I do think that is a more efficient spot than most on the property because of how big the wetlands are.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I'm
I
fine.
have none.
Thank you, Ryan. And I discovered today that Ryan is going to be moving on to bigger and better things. Ryan, we thank you for being part of the team, and we wish you the best.
I appreciate that. And thank you
Just say
guys as
Happy
well.
New Year, and now you're leaving?
I know. You guys can give it to me. It's okay. I've been getting it all week.
We really appreciated it. Thank you.
So
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Harry, you have anything to add? Okay. Anybody in the public would like to address this application? No, and Matt, anybody on the phone?
You have 0 callers. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed, you want to take it?
Yes. Then in the case of Jessica Houghton, 101 South Forest Street, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-28-9-21.1, I'd like to make a motion to close the hearing and the record at this time.
Second.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. Thank you.
Tara?
Thank you. Next, we go on to work session, post-hearing decisions. We have a few of them this evening. Read the first one into the record. First application is What of You 3 LLC at 232 Westlake Drive in Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-12-4-29. The size and location is 27,050 square feet at 232 Westlake Drive, Lot 6, Block 155 in Montauk Beach Development Corp., filed September 7th, 1927 in Montauk. The relief sought is an appeal of a stop work order issued by ordinance enforcement pursuant to 10212. The zoning district is A residence, VE8X, and the secret class is type 2. Who's leading us off on this?
This was mine.
Harry, go for it.
Find it. Okay, so this was an appeal of a stop work order that was issued. The hearing was on December 3rd. It was a little unusual in that they weren't really appealing that the stop work order had been issued for some work. They know it should have had permits. So what the agent wanted was, his feeling is that the stop work order in the building code, the stop work order code, does not allow for a stop work order to be done if there's some work on the property that may not have needed a permit to be done. And his contention was, I guess, some of the work on the property didn't need a permit to be done. So we had the hearing. I do not agree with the agent. And if you look at, we had Joe Palermo and Kevin Cooper that both testified at the hearing and provided documentation and a copy of the transactions that happened. Let's see some of it. Bear with me here. Something got out of order. Okay, here we go. And we had sent a whole bunch of emails that were sent back from the code enforcement people to the applicant and the agent about what transactions, what is expired. So, yeah, expired. So if you look at the code, which is something I left home, of 102-12 for stop work order in the code, it states that the code enforcement that the building department and code enforcement stop work orders can be issued in a number of cases. If work is permitted but is not being done per the agreement and the application, and it's veering off that, or in a situation where work is being done that has no permit requested or valid at the time. Or there was a third or, but I left my printout of the code at home. There was a third or, but basically those two right there say that, yes, a stop work order can happen on an account where there is no permit pending at the time. And if someone veers off a plan that was approved previously and does other things, that a stop work order can also be issued. I believe, okay, so there was a chronology given. Kevin Cooper, this property got a C of O on March 13th. They were, with that C of O, it was a C of O. So everything that had been planned and approved on the property was completed. In April 18th, of just a month later, there was a complaint from the highway department about work being done on it. On April 22nd, the code enforcement went out to look, and they did issue a stop work order because there was landscaping being done, walkways, retaining walls, and a whole lot of stuff. But anyway, so they issued the stop work order. I don't even know if I have to keep going on this because the appeal is for the code, that the code is not correct. And I feel the code is absolutely correct, and it's very clearly stated there. So I don't know, counsel, do we have to keep discussing the whole chronology?
No.
Okay. So I will leave it at that, and what am I doing? I'm denying the petitioner's appeal? Okay, so that's what I'm doing.
Okay, thank you. Jane?
Sure. Do I want to defer to Montauk or I'll go? I'll go?
You wanna?
Okay, I'll go.
Okay, let it
No, I
go.
just wanted to, okay, good,
Definitely.
thank you. Okay, so I also am not going to go through the chronology. And I agree with my fellow board member, Berger. I'll just give, some rationale for my view to uphold the stop work order and deny the appeal. Again, I sort of think of an appeal of a stop work order as, like, as you said, either it was issued improperly or not. I think everything we saw in the record and in the testimony showed that the stop work order was appropriately and lawfully issued on the property. And that it also seems to be clear from the documentation that was provided that the stop work order was not complied with. I thought the testimony from Agent Cooper was clear, that the code says all work must stop, but then there is a longstanding policy that the building inspector, the code enforcement can work with the applicant to see, oh, is there something that, is there a safety issue? Does something on the house have to be secured? That was not an issue. It didn't appear. Work continued. Was also discussed that the agent for the applicant or the applicant homeowner asked to be able to remove some, it was called vehicles, but it's more like, I think, construction equipment. And Kevin Cooper said they had reached out, said it was okay, but with their oversight, and then they disappeared, but there was never really that communication. So, I think between that outreach that was not responded to, the the sort of attempt to block the visual sightline of the inspectors when they would go by. There was another complaint that came up about a potential quote illegal apartment over the garage. The code enforcement couldn't go on the property without permission. They asked for permission, they were denied it. So, all in, I think we're being asked to do two things which I just don't think are in our jurisdiction. Number one, basically asking us to change the code, to add some clarification to it. There's a legitimate path for that. If someone feels that the stop work order code is not correct, that path goes through the town board. Secondly, this is a matter that appears, and again, we're also being asked to override sort of longstanding policy and procedure of the building department and the code enforcement department. I don't think that's either within our purview. So this remains a matter to be sorted by code enforcement. It's also at the Justice Court. And so all in, I'm denying the request for appeal, or I'm upholding the stop work order. I'm sure everybody will look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think the question that was raised by Mr. Tarbett was what can or cannot happen after a stop work order is issued? Was there a window for him to do other things? What does a stop work order mean? Then there was a discussion by both Kevin Cooper and Joe Palumbo about how this process works, and we reviewed that, and we heard many very good examples of just how the process works. In this case, was a stop work order issued. We saw photos of what the site looked like in April. We saw photos of what the site looked like in November. Very clearly, work went on. The request on behalf of the applicant was, does any of that fit into a window that would allow them to do it? And how do we define that? I think they did a good job. The representatives of the town of explaining just how that works. Examples were given of, as was just mentioned, that if the safety was an issue, if the security of the building was an issue, and there were a number of kinds, including one in Cranberry Hole, a project we all know that was stopped, and yet it was mentioned by both officials how they allowed windows that were on the site to go in because it really didn't relate to the offense of that time. So there was clearly a mechanism by which anyone who gets a stop work order can go back and approach. Sounds as if it's been flexible on behalf of the people who represent the town. If you go in and you have a legitimate complaint, they're certainly willing to listen to it. That did not happen in this case. They come to us later on and say, how do we redefine, how can we define what we're allowed to do with a stop work order? I think it was very clearly stated. I think the code, as was mentioned by Member Berger, reinforces it. A stop work order means stopping all work. Anything beyond that, there's a mechanism by which you can gain permission. That mechanism doesn't include blocking the driveway, refusing access, and then claiming that the work either wasn't done or wasn't part of an original permit and on all of that. A lot of the other tangential things that came up really don't relate to this. I think if Member Berg is correct, this is simply a question of how do we define what can and cannot be done under a stop work order. I think that the effort that was made on the part of both Mr. Cooper and Joe Palumbo showed us that they had visited the site, had gone about it properly, the proper procedures were put in place, and an opportunity was there for that individual to interact with the town in a more positive way. I'm going to agree with my fellow board members to deny the request to override the ruling of the building department. I think it was all properly done. I think it was well explained. I have no problem taking that position of denying the request.
Thank you. Denise?
Thank you. I agree with my fellow board members. I would like to elaborate a little bit more, though, on what happened at that public hearing. Mr. Cooper, who is our code enforcement director, gave us a timeline and photographs outlining violations that were done. Mr. Palermo, our chief building inspector, noted that the town code status, when a stop work order is issued, that all work is suspended. Now, there are exceptions made, case-by-case basis, and there are conditions that have to be met. They work closely with people to maintain that the site be secured. So I'm not going to get into what's already been stated. They are stop work orders, just for the record. I do want to put this on the record because the agent was very clear about how he's going to go forward. The stop work order, they failed to obtain a building permit. They failed to comply with the provisions of New York State Building Code. They failed to comply with the sections of 255 of the East Hampton Town Code. To resume, and it clearly states this in the stop work order, by obtaining a valid building permit and posting the permit card on the job site, by conforming to New York State Building Code, by conforming to the provisions of 255 of the East Hampton Town Code. They violated 102-12 by continuing to work and failing to comply with the stop work order. They violated 255-420B in parentheses 1 in parentheses C. They did violate this by building or allowing to be built landscaping, retaining walls, grading, and walkways before having first obtained a natural resource special permit from the town. They violated 102-7A-1. They observed that landscaping work consisted of grading, new site walkways had been built without the benefit of an approved building permit. So why are we here? Mr. Tarbett, and I'm quoting from the public hearing, felt that his question, and his one and only question was, he believes that a stop work order only covers things that require building permits and/or NRSPs and are covered by the and/or are covered by the zoning code, not beyond that. But clearly, things were done here that, regardless of whether they were allowed or not, they were in direct disregard of what we have in the code. I'd also like to talk about why we have a code enforcement department. A code enforcement officer's purpose is to ensure compliance with local ordinances and codes by investigating complaints, which in this case, there was a complaint, and they were denied access to even follow up on a complaint. Inspecting properties and issuing citations when violations are found which maintain the quality and safety of a community, and in this case, a neighborhood, by upholding standards related to land use, building codes, and property maintenance. Waterview 3 LLC denied code enforcement access when a complaint was made about an illegal apartment. Also want to get on record why we have a building inspector. A building inspector's purpose is to ensure that buildings are constructed and maintained according to local building codes and safety regulations by inspecting structures at various stages of construction to verify compliance with plans, zoning laws, and structural integrity, ultimately safeguarding the safety of occupants within the building. These departments are crucial to our safety as a community, and the regulations are there for a reason. Waterview 3 LLC did not agree. I cannot and will not uphold any of the actions taken by this appeal, and I am denying the petitioner's appeal, and I'm upholding all of the actions that were taken by code enforcement.
Thank you. I agree that the appeal should be denied. Couple of points that I want to make is that the stop work order was issued 4/22/24. Mr. Tarbett then, subsequent to that, went to code enforcement to try to, let me back up a little bit. What they're asking us to do is make a broad decision, basically a town-wide decision on the code, which the stop work order says all work stop, and they're asking us to make a broad decision to say that there is work that can be continued, that the town is overextending its powers, basically. That issue, during the hearing, I argued with the applicant that most of our cases are specific to the site and the application. In this instance, the stop work order was first off acknowledged by the applicant on June 5th in the letter to Tarbit saying that they do acknowledge the stop worker. However, he is requesting work to be continued elsewhere, like restoring a lawn, filling in holes, things like that. Then you go to scope of work, and this is what I don't understand, which I do want. It appears to be subsequent to the stop work order. There is a scope of work by Landscape Details. This is dated April 30th. This is after the stop work order. If you read that scope of the work, it's quite extensive. And it relates to a set of drawings by the landscape architect dated January 23rd, and we have that copy in the file. That drawing is quite extensive as to the scope of the work. There is no question that if you look at that scope of work, that there would have to been a natural resources special permit for that work to have been done. It's extensive. There's retaining walls, and there's evidence that a lot of this work continued anyway afterwards. That being said, I think that in this instance, even the work related to the stop work order, there is work that they were asking for, filling of holes, restoring of the the lawn and stuff like that applies to the scope of work related to the stop work order. And I think it was the intent of the code enforcement and building inspector. When Tarbit went to the building inspector and to code enforcement in a letter to Ken Cooper, in a letter dated June 5th, 24, addressing the situation, lays out the policies and protocols that they have. If you have an issue with the stop work order, come to us and we'll make that determination. I believe this is where the determination needs to lie, within the purview of the building inspector primarily. It is up to him to determine whether or not associated work to the stop work order is associated or not, and can continue. If we were to make that decision, that broad decision, we would leave that determination up to the homeowner to make that decision, and I think that's a slippery slope to go down. All that said, I'm then with that, I would make the determination that the stop work order is valid, and the determination by the building inspector and the code enforcement, Ken Cooper, is valid as well.
Okay, can I say the one thing I left out, which was repeated by other members, that on that 102-12 code, it says the stop work order means all work on the property stops.
Right.
That's it. I'm done.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Ronan Donnelly and Paul Sahai at 45 Mako Lane in Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Act number 300-175-6622. Size and location is 7,500 square feet at 45 Mako Lane, Beach Hampton, section number 5, block 32, lots 59 through 61, map number 1763 in Amagansett. The description is the modification and zoning of a zoning board determination filed January 23rd, 2019. In order to demolish the existing residence and to construct an approximately 1,565 square foot two-story residence with approximately 1,810 square feet of first story, second story, and roof decking, 36 square feet hot tub, new sanitary system, driveway, and to revegetate approximately 2,168 square feet within jurisdiction and setbacks of freshwater wetlands, dune land, and dune vegetation. The relief sought is 4 variances and natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of 5 feet from 255-1110 from the East Hampton Town Code are required for this application. Variances of 57.6 feet, 63.6 feet, 56.3 feet are required from 255-430 of the town code in order to construct the proposed residence, 42.4 feet, decking 36.4 feet, and hot tub required. And hot tub 43.7 feet from freshwater wetlands where 100-foot setbacks are required. One variance of 74.4 feet is required from 255-430 of the town code in order to construct a proposed sanitary system. 75.6 feet from freshwater wetlands where 100-foot setback is required and any other relief necessary. Zoning district B residence, AE flood zone, elevation 10, secret class is type 2. Member Meering, this is in your neighborhood.
Thank you. Okay, so first I just do want to note that there was and is still a typo in the notice, which when you read it, you sort of trip over it. It almost suggests that there's another variance of 5 feet from 255-1110, which would refer to the dimensional table. I did confirm, and I just want to make sure it's on the record, there is no variance we're approving or that's on the table, approving or disapproving, that's on the table for 255-1110, some sort of glitch in there. So I just want to make that clear. Okay, the current application before us was heard on December 3rd, 2024. The application we heard was classified as a modification of an application to redevelop this lot that was originally heard on December 4th, 2018, and was approved as per determination made by actually only 3 board members at the time. I believe that determination was actually dated January 22, 2018, although the date on the determination or file is incorrect. It says 2018. The modification required a hearing because one of the variances to the wetland for the house itself is now 2 feet greater variance than what was approved before. The prior approval covered the demolition of a 766 square foot, 1-story residence, a shed, and an 814 square foot patio. And that application was to build a 2-story, 1,420 square foot house, which was an 85% increase in GFA. As part of that approval, the board granted an NRSP and approved the various substantial wetland setback variances. We continue to note, as it was then, this property is constrained in size with respect to proximity to surrounding wetlands, and there is really no conforming location on the parcel for new development, redevelopment. The current applicant was also the owner and applicant at the 2018 application. They acquired the property, I think, sometime in 2016. At the public hearing, the applicant was represented by Mr. John Tarbett of Tarbett and Lester. No one else appeared on behalf of the application. The survey we used and relied upon during the hearing was dated April 26, 2024. Mr. Tarbett characterized the new design revised application as, quote, substantially similar to the 2018 application. The applicant's agent also described the revised application, and it's a total redesign, as being motivated mostly, he didn't use the word aesthetic, but mostly by design issues. He said upon further scrutiny, when they were getting ready to price out the project and I guess getting ready to go for building permits, that they just felt they really didn't care for the design and they hired a new architect. But their intent, he described as, keeping the scope of the project basically in keeping with, what was approved in 2018, 2019. The major change is really that the second level is cantilevered and extends over the first story, and so it's that cantilever part that gets 2 feet closer to the wetland than the prior than the prior application that was approved. One of the noticed neighbors at 53 Deerfield offered comments during the public hearing and submitted some information or comments to the record as well. Their main concern appeared to be a question about possible regrading or increased, the ground or potentially retaining walls that could exacerbate flooding. I believe in the public hearing that those questions were addressed and those issues were resolved. Okay, just quickly on the lot characteristics, this is a 7,500 square foot lot that's pre-existing non-conforming, substandard to zoning district minimums by 62.5%. That's not uncommon in Beach Hampton, where the great majority of lots are very materially substandard. This is particularly true also on Mako Lane. There are no wetlands actually flagged on the property, but the project is in jurisdiction of wetlands on both the east and the west sides of the property. The lot is mostly devoid of beach vegetation and the undulating topography that usually characterized the dune land on Mako is mostly gone. I'm just going to quickly summarize the differences to the current application versus the prior. So the GFA of the house is increasing by about 10% or 145 square feet. As we said, the wetland setback for the house decreases by 2 feet or 4.5%. The first and second story and roof decking in total increased to 1,810 square feet or just under 10% versus the 1649 that was approved in the last. Because the house position has been shifted a bit and reoriented, the wetland setback and the variance required for the decking actually improves by about 10.6%. The hot tub it remains about, I think, the same size. It was so, and the setback to the wetlands also actually improves for the hot tub. The sanitary system remains virtually unchanged. It needs a setback variance from the wetlands, but I think as we understand it, it's the most conforming location on the property. The lot coverage is expanding by about 11%, so that's the building coverage, and the total lot coverage remains pretty much unchanged. I do want to turn to the topic of clearing, because at the public hearing, when it was presented really by Tyler and the planning department, I don't know if I misinterpreted it, and others did too, but it seemed to be suggested that in this modified application, what was being proposed was an incremental, another 2,168 square feet of more revegetation. But when I actually went back and looked at the survey, clearing is going up slightly, and I compared the clearing. So if you go back to the determination, section F, point 11 stated then, as a condition of approval, clearing on the parcel will be reduced from 6,505 to 2,810. And on the new survey that we have for the modification, that 2,000, that's actually rising to 2,168. So I want to raise this because I felt coming out of the public hearing, okay, you know, some give and take on the variances, everything's getting about 10% bigger, but oh, there's a sort of a lot of mitigation here from more clearing, from more re-veg, but that is not the case. So I'm interested to hear if that makes a difference to my fellow board members. I don't think the changes all in are big enough to like trip the wire to say that somehow this is no longer consistent with standards, but did feel like some additional mitigation would have been appropriate, and we're not getting that. So I'm going to leave it there.
Were you denying?
No, I'm approving, but I want to hear, because I think you also thought there was, you know, incremental mitigation.
Yeah.
Can you ask me?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I ended up with the same thing about the clearing. Look, everything you said, I agree with. I'm also looking to approve the modification. But yes, I have from the hearing that he stated 2168, I believe, re-veg proposed in the northeast corner. And then, as you said, going back to the 2019 determination, there was revegetation that was in the there was like E, F, G, and H, and with a CNR also. Well, the CNR is for all of those. But he also stated that there is a robust re-veg plan.
I meant to say that, thank you.
Which I didn't see in the file, so I don't know if maybe Tyler can show us that. If there's a re-veg plan from the 2019 determination.
From the,
I have the same problem. The clearing doesn't add up.
I don't think there's a re-veg plan from 2019. It just
There wasn't.
required that there one be submitted,
Mhm.
Right.
and I don't think they ever did.
They never did.
The other
And it
thing
wasn't
about
a part of the
this,
He said it was a robust re-veg. And actually, you're right, the determination in 2019 said
It
a
was
re-veg
conditional.
plan would be submitted.
Yeah.
So we have no
The
re-veg
other thing that
plan.
confuses me on this is the current survey that they submitted shows essentially the same proposed limits of clearing and a reduced number down to 2,000, which is essentially the same thing as 2019. So I don't know. I'm confused as well.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I have the existing clearing says 6505, and, well, they have proposed on the survey you're looking at 2894.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's leaving out like
Which is essentially the same,
3,600 feet.
Right. And then,
Yeah.
essentially the same thing that they were proposing back in 2019.
right.
Mhm.
It actually goes up, the
The board certainly
clearing
could hold them
increases,
to that if
actually.
they wanted.
Yeah, that
of
might be a
course.
discussion we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Overall, I am looking to approve this also. I think the benefits, the improvements that Member Mearing already mentioned are good. And the cantilever issue kind of resolves the residents' 2-foot change in the setback for me. Can I bring this up? You're going to, one thing I want to say, we had a new sanitary plan not a new plan, but submitted. And the only thing that, and I know this doesn't count as a survey, but on it, they changed the spa word to pool, and that bothers me. So I want that changed.
Yeah,
If this is
I don't think
approved.
it's important on the, yeah,
Yeah, you always say
the
that.
final survey from the
Right.
engineer would have to say.
I think the dimensions of the spa,
Dimensions,
from a
well,
setback perspective, like you need
Yeah.
double setbacks for a
Right.
spa that big.
Yeah, I agree.
It needs pool setbacks, so,
6x6 hot tub, I believe.
yeah.
Okay, Denise?
Okay. Where to start? I understood the revegetation plan the night of the hearing to be, they were going to implement 2,168 square feet of re-veg in the northeast corner, where right now there's nothing.
Right.
Right.
But that-
So
Right.
that to me is a good thing. They're still within the footprint of what was previously approved, and you're going to laugh, but I think this is a better application than the one that was approved in 2019. The deck is set back further by 3.5 feet from wetlands. The hot tub is set back 4.9 feet. Coverage is going up by 50 square feet. The structure itself is further from the wetland, but the new structure is cantilevered, and that's the 2-foot closer is what's becoming the problem. This is not a visual anyone will see. This won't have any effect on the character of the neighborhood. The grading is not changing in any way, and there's no retaining wall with the septic plan. It's a FEMA compliant house. So as long as we get this revegetation plan implemented, which I understood is not, at this point, nothing there, I feel that justifies the grant of this modification, and I'm okay with this application.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Member Mearing, for your complete analysis to get us going and bringing up the discrepancy in what you all thought was the revegetation plan the night of the hearing, which obviously is slightly different. Factors in my considering this application, it's a small house in disrepair on an almost 100% cleared lot. The 2018 ZBA approval was given for substantially the same project. That's from the TAM. That's the language from the TAM. The 2018 approval was for the 1,420 square foot house. We're now looking at a 1,565, which is, as was mentioned, plus 145 square feet. The NRSP invariance is triggered by the 2-foot cantilevered overhang, and I think the discussion that's been had already by some of the board members here and how that This is actually an improved location for the house. I agree that the decking is set back 3+ feet from the wetlands, and the hot tub is 4+ feet from the previous approval. It's just that the overhang now has triggered this reaction that we have to take and look at. I think that there were some benefits here, improvements to the site. Right now, the site's got AstroTurf and outbuildings, and this is a big improvement to get rid of some of what was there. The revegetation was an important one for me, and I want that same clarification that the board has, that we see that the re-veg plan that's submitted with any approval that might happen reflects the spirit of what we think we're approving at this time. I think that the re-veg, creating a buffer to the wetlands was key. I think it was mentioned just a minute ago that assuming that it was in that northeast corner was a big part of what the approval is. That's where a wetland would be the most affected. There was a neighbor complaint, as was mentioned by Member Meering, that the septic might call for raising an area, and that would act as a dam for water that might move from lot to lot, and whether or not there might be a retaining wall. That was clarified the night of the hearing, that there is no retaining wall, and that the system, the new IA system, would be put in without undue disturbance to the area. And in point of fact, that the additional vegetation would help with potential flooding and not cause additional damage. Overall, I think it is an improvement on the 2018 approval. I think the approval is similar enough, and I think that we should show respect for the previous ZBA ruling, and that they did have an approval at that point that they felt was adequate. This one there, we can start from there as a starting point. If this is approval on an improvement on their approval, that it's even a more beneficial outcome for the town. So I don't think there's anything else I have to mention. It's already been mentioned. I think that what we're being asked to approve, the 2-foot overhang, is something to be considered, but I think what we're being offered more than compensates for it. So I'm willing to approve this application, this modification at this time.
Thank you. I agree with my board members. I don't have a lot of add, but maybe we should try to nail down this clearing issue before we go. Tyler, do you recall what the limits of clearing was on the 2019? Can you just?
Essentially, I
have it
Oh,
here.
you have it, go.
Yeah, this is right from,
Essentially, this red line around the house, just around the house as it was designed back then. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
the number, just so you know, the number that was specified in the determination in 2019, that the proposed clearing would be reduced to 2,810 square feet. So that whole re-veg, although we haven't seen the plan and there's still nothing on the property that shows
The
it,
survey is saying 2,000.
This is the survey.
94.
that's the new one. So
Survey.
sorry,
So this green line is their limits of clearing after re-veg essentially.
So it does appear they're adding that northeast corner.
Be essentially all of this,
Okay, so then I think
if I'm
that
understanding it correctly.
I can make sure that that is the clarification of our approval.
And they did
They are
state
including
the
that
night of
as
the hearing.
additional revegetation.
What's
then why does clearing go up?
It shouldn't. I think the survey has to, we make a note that the survey
Surveys.
needs to be reflected, same.
So this survey has this proposed limits of clearing on it as well, in red. So it's essentially the same idea. It's like a 5-foot buffer between the two, between the structures and that edge of clearing. And the clearing limits are showing to go down to 28,40,94.
That's correct.
The same idea. You'd just be holding them to the same condition. That was already required.
Right.
Re-veg to the limits of clearing, which is X number of square feet.
Okay.
Which is fine. I just don't think it's
That's the new one,
incremental.
right?
It's not incremental mitigation. It's the same mitigation that was
Same-
approved.
holding them to
in
the same
the-
standard.
Yeah, right. Which
Okay.
is fine.
Hold them
I'm
up to
so
what
fine
was
with that,
already
yep.
approved, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can we just talk about the plan itself for a moment? So is it going to be a condition of, because we don't have it, it is sandy.
Condition of the planning department.
Modification, right?
And I just would like to say, because it was dune land, it's still sandy. Obviously, it needs to be revegetated. I just want to make, and obviously this is the purview of the planning department, but, it should look sandy and duney, right? With the new vegetation. Don't want to see it like sodded over or.
I don't think the planning department would allow that.
We never put sod.
Excuse me, I don't think the planning department would let that fly.
I know, just wanted to get on the record that all that sandiness is very
Yeah, of course. Just do
core
it.
to the character of the.
All right, thank you. Council, we good?
You.
Will you guys just say it out loud one more time so I'm clear? The proposed limits of clearing number demonstrated on this survey
No,
is
2019.
acceptable to the board? So not, Tyler, what's the date on the one with the red line?
That's the current one.
Okay, so that's 28,
April 26, 2024.
and that number is 28,
94.
94, but you guys want to see, can you pull up the other one?
I think that number is what they can do.
I don't know if that's what the board is saying.
Well,
Sorry,
what was it in
what number?
Opposed to
2019?
that, I think it's a small,
That's as tight as they can make it to the building. They can't do anything less than that.
Okay,
right.
I mean, that's a 5-foot buffer around the structure,
Are you
essentially.
sure?
Slightly over the sanitary. It'd be just beach grass here, but
Very hard to get clearing much lower than that 84
yeah.
feet.
they're essentially re-vegging everything that they're not improving.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it was back in 2019.
Right.
I agree.
Just a slightly different footprint now, so
The house is a little bigger, so.
Yeah.
The clearing is a little
total
greater.
coverage is a little different,
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
okay, so then yes, I'm good. I got it.
okay.
Next, we have David and Kira Barry at 169 Atlantic Avenue, Amagansett, Suffolk, tax map number 300-178-2-4. Size and location is 75,695 square feet at 169 Atlantic Avenue, Amagansett. Description is construct a 236.2 square feet, second story addition, barbecue ramp steps to an existing deck, IA system, additional windows, enclose a 28 square foot first story porch with 2 habitable space, relocate HVAC units, expand the driveway with associated clearing, and install solar panels on a detached garage within side yard and pyramid setbacks on a property within jurisdiction of freshwater wetlands and containing primary dunes, beach vegetation, and dune land. Relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the town code, and 9 variances are required for this application. 6 variances of 41.25, 33.8, 29.3, 26.9, 24.8, and 5.1 feet are required from 255-440B of the East Hampton Town Code to construct a ramp, 58.8 feet, deck step 66.2, enclosed porch 70.7, second story addition 73.1, barbecue 75.2, and relocated HVAC units 94.9 feet from dune crest where 100-foot setbacks are required. 1 variance of 75.3 feet is required from 255-430 of the town code to construct solar panels 24.7 feet from a freshwater wetland where 100-foot setback is required. 1 variance of 13.9 feet is required from 255-1110 to construct the solar panels 1 foot 1 from the northern lot line where a 50-foot setback is required. 1 variance of 0.5 feet is required from 255-1172D to construct the solar panels above the pre-existing non-conforming 16-foot pyramid encroachment and any other relief necessary. Zoning district is A residence, VE 19, VE 18, VE 17, AE 10, and the secret class is type 2. Member Meering?
Yes, thank you. Oh my God, roll call at the same time, sorry. It's winter. The public hearing for this application was held also on December 3rd, 2024. The applicant was represented by Mr. Eric Brown of Ackerman Partners. Also present and recognized to speak during the hearing were Scott Baker, the project architect, and Mr. Billy Kalbacher, who's, I guess, a long-term watcher of this property, and I think he's also designated as the contractor on the project that is proposed. The planning department was represented by Morgan Slater. The TAM dated November 14th, 2024. No members of the public commented during the hearing or submitted anything into the record. During the hearing, we were working off a survey dated, I think, February 25th, 2023. In terms of the property details, this property was purchased by the applicants in 2021, and they seek to make some rather fairly modest modifications to the house and the site. The primary element of the changes is to build a 235 square foot second story addition. That's just over 10% increase of the existing living area. I think the house is just a little, current house is a little over 2,200 square feet. The addition will be built entirely within the confines of part of an area that is currently a second floor deck on the landward or north side of the house. As I understand it, the bedroom count will not change, though they are reconfiguring. There's also the addition of solar panels on the garage. And I would define all the other proposed adjustments to be fairly minimal in nature. The parcel is the buildable lot area, excluding the land over the bluff crest, is 53,342 square feet, or 1.22 acres. The coverages and clearing ratios will remain, I think, substantially below the max allowed. The parcel is reached by a 950-foot long access road, driveway, easement through trustee land, and it takes access off the east side of Atlantic Avenue, and the parcel abuts the Atlantic Ocean on the south and two neighboring lots on Beach Avenue, and then trustee land on the west and the north. I already mentioned that it's a 2,200 square foot, 4-bedroom house. It was built 124 years ago. And although the structure does not benefit from any historic landmark designation, it has historic architectural significance to the area. The entirety of the house structure is non-conforming to FEMA. It's all in a VE17 flood zone and seaward of the CHA line. The garage, however, is in an AE10 and landward of the CHA line. Obviously, as I said, it's not FEMA compliant. It was confirmed at the hearing and in the record that the chief building inspector confirmed that the scope of the proposed project does not trigger or cross the 50% threshold that would require either require a septic upgrade or require the house be made FEMA compliant. However, we are getting a new septic upgraded IA system as mitigation in the application. The variances, 9 variances, 6 are related to the changes in the house, and then the other 3 are related to the solar panels on the garage. We did learn there was a memo submitted into the record right before the public hearing that went through the list of 22 items in the project scope. 4 of those were removed, and that removed 2 of the variances, which I believe the variances removed are for the ramp and also for closing in the part of the deck, part of the porch to become a mudroom. At the end of the hearing, we closed the hearing but left the record open for a number of things, particularly a vegetation landscaping plan, a letter, and this is what we received that we had asked for, excuse me, a vegetation landscaping plan for martyrs indicating general areas of invasives removal and new planting material, a letter from Mr. Kalbacher acknowledging a few basic construction related items, but I'll see what my fellow board members say. I still don't think it was really even a construction protocol. And then there was an updated survey. We just have to clean up a little. I think that survey still needs to be cleaned up because there's still some elements on it that were removed, and we had asked that the survey make sure to remove all the things that were removed, but it's not significant at this point in terms of the decision. In addition, we're told that the trustees did have a letter, which is in the file, that the trustee, that they gave permission to the applicant to use parts of their public parking lot to stage construction vehicles and equipment. That's the application. Turning to the NRSP and variance standards, per my review and analysis, this application appears to meet all of them, and I will be approving the application. I note the mitigation of the septic upgrade and the removal of invasives and revegetation with native plantings offsets, to me, in large part, the increased development variances. I also think the addition of solar panels, although on paper they require these large setbacks, it's the garage that pre-exists non-conforming that drives that. So just quickly through the standards, the grant of the variances, will they cause an undesirable change in the character? No, I do not believe it will, preserving the historic structure and not really significantly increasing the size of the house. B, whether the benefits sought by applicant can be achieved by some other method other than variance. The existing structure is within setback jurisdiction of the bluff crest, so there I don't see any other way around the project without variances. Whether the variances are substantial on paper, some of them do look to be that, but all in the scope of the whole project still seems limited. So I don't think there's any change to intensity of usage. And I don't believe the grant of the variance will have adverse impact or effect on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. It's, somewhat self-created, as everything is, but not in a significant way. And that's, for those reasons, plus the mitigation, I am approving the application in full.
Thank you. Eric?
Okay, once again, I can just say I agree with everything you said. As stated, they gave us everything we asked for, the three items that were left at the hearing for the re-veg plan. I'm not sure exactly how much the re-veg, I had written down, it's about 7,400 square feet of re-veg, which is great. And the IA system without being a requirement that they're putting in. It's a lovely property. And they're not asking too much, as Member Meering said, the largest variances are for the solar panels on top of the garage in the corner, and that's to me is a plus also. We did get, actually, the one thing Mr. Kalbacher in his extensive protocol said they're going to put park the cars in the parking lot there at Atlantic Avenue. So we'll see. But anyway, but I too think it meets all the variance standards and NRSP, and I'm approving this in its entirety.
Thank you. Denise?
I just have one question, Member Mary.
Yes.
We did receive a letter from the trustees, because I asked our secretary about that this morning, and she hadn't seen anything.
Sorry, we didn't receive the letter. We received a letter
Requesting.
from the application saying that that the trustee had approved.
Did it come from the trustees?
I don't think we had that. They said that.
Clear about that.
Yeah, they said that it was approved by the trustees.
Who's they?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I have it in the file.
Because it was one of my questions.
It's in the file, sorry.
If we are going to approve it, we can make a condition on
The
it.
approval that
Yeah.
we make sure there is
Yeah,
approval.
yeah, yeah.
Because
Okay,
I saw the letter that went to Francis Bach. I just didn't see whether or not he agreed to it.
It was stated in, I'll go find whose letter it was,
Go ahead.
that it was approved during a trustee meeting.
because we
I
would
didn't go
have to
back
have
and watch that
something. All right,
meeting.
we want,
Okay,
we
we'll go,
want
yeah.
more clarification than, in the condition of approval, if approved, we would have to make sure that permission did happen. I'm agreeing with my board members. I think the mitigation to upgrade the sanitary system voluntarily, I mean, I think the applicants are very good stewards of the land. The re-veg of 7,400 square feet will obviously be a benefit. They're going to retain the current 3-bedroom layout and add only a second bath. They've eliminated certain aspect. No?
There's another bedroom, it's a
No, no,
four-bedroom
no,
house.
I mean, on the,
Two bedrooms.
well, the headed second floor, the former plan to eliminate one of the existing bedrooms had been modified to retain the 3-bedroom layout and add only a second bath.
That's what I got.
Yeah, and then there's a fourth bedroom
Right.
upstairs that's not changing, right? So, yeah.
So they've modified that. There's a list outlining things they've taken out. What else? Just want to go through a couple of other things because I think this is an excellent application. I don't think these are substantial variances. The renovation of the residences and the addition of the other improvements is not diminishing, damaging, or polluting any of the natural features, which is what we look at if we're going to issue a natural resource special permit. The residence is being renovated within its existing footprint. The property is conforming as to clearing. The improvements in their proposed and existing locations will not, in my opinion, affect the dune crest or wetlands. It will not change the character of the neighborhood, and I said that, and I do believe that this application was very well done. A lot of time and effort went into meeting the standards, and I do think it complies with NRSP and variance standards, and I'm approving it in its entirety.
Thank you. Ed? Thank you. I'm going to agree with my board members. I'm going to start by thanking again Member Meering for a very complete presentation of the facts. I'm not going to go over at the end the standards, even though I was prepared to, because I think you covered them well. I'm going to start by saying that there was this, just this beautiful environmentally sensitive site with a classic 100-year-old building. So it immediately brings to us a certain sensitivity and attention we want to give to this site for all the reasons, primarily environmentally. The existing 2,200 square foot high house, they're going to add 236 feet. They're going to add that, as was mentioned. The addition is going to be entirely within the existing house footprint. There were things that they eliminated at the hearing. They're not going to enclose the porch, not going to enclose the gazebo. The west walkway and ramp would be eliminated. The bedroom count would, as was just mentioned, and just now, will stay the same with the addition of a single bath. They are going to eliminate the vegetable gardens and kayak rack at the garage that had originally been proposed. Take that out. The 950-foot driveway passes through trustee land, and we made a point of discussing with the applicant how that can and will be protected, and that was addressed. There's a blue stroke walkway at the garage, which is to be removed. All of these were positives in the way in which they reacted to the TAM and to the town's request. The garage only sits 6 inches from the property line, and they said that all new work would be accessed from the south and east, and therefore they would not be working on land that is not theirs and belongs to the trustees. I don't think we were told that the building department certified that the project is not substantial enough to trigger FEMA compliance. There were many positives, I thought, related to the project that were brought up by the applicant. No swimming pool or tennis court proposed on a site like this, meaning that there was very little being asked for, not a complete redirection on how the houses could be considered on the site. The sanitary system is being installed voluntarily. It is not triggered by, again, there's 7,400 square feet of re-veg. Much of it is in an area that was disturbed by the driveway that they put in and changing the driveway. So not all of that is in new areas. It's in areas that would have required that. I think the removal of all the invasives on the site, some ornamentals and the black pines, was ambitious on their part to have offered it to us, because very often we don't get that. And then at the hearing, we did require the building protocol and the re-veg plan. That's been discussed. I think that the building protocol is a couple of brief comments with the understanding, I think it was brought up by Mr. Kalbecker tonight, that he is going to continue to be very responsible for the land, but we're going to see to it that he gets held to all of the protections that are in place and stay in place during that. And I think at the end, they're good stewards of the land. It's a reasonable proposal. They had a positive reaction to the TAM, and they supplied all the follow-up materials we were looking for. So I'm going to agree with the comment that was made that it is a good application, well thought out, and it wasn't so ambitious as to give us pause over what they're asking for. So with that, I'm willing to approve this application in its entirety.
Thank you, Ed. I agree with my board members. I really don't have anything to add. And I think I'll leave it at that. Well done. Thank you. Next application is Bluff Road. What's that?
I need like a candy or something. Go on.
Bluff Road Associates LLC at 325 Bluff Road, Amagansett, Suffolk, tax map number 300-190-2-21. Size and location is 112,500 square feet or 2.583 acres at 325 Bluff Road, contiguous to the Atlantic Ocean in Amagansett. The description is to demolish an existing 3,926 square foot residence, appurtenant structures, and non-native landscaping, and construct a new 8,896 square foot residence with a 599 square foot detached garage, 1,471 square foot swimming pool and spa, 1,165 square foot of patios, 3,989 square foot of terraces, 892 square foot of walkways, retaining wall, outdoor shower, generator, IA system, LP tanks, pervious driveway, dune land restoration, grading, and temporary clearing on a parcel of land within a velocity flood zone within the jurisdiction of freshwater wetlands, and containing barrier dunes, secondary dunes, and beach vegetation. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town Code. The need variances are required for this application. Variances of 32.6 feet, 35.5 feet, 20.8 feet, 14.6 feet, 14.9 feet, 9 feet, and 4 feet are required from 255-430 of the East Hampton Town Code to construct the entry stairs, residence planter, generator, retaining wall, LP tanks, and outdoor shower. 67.4 feet, 64.5 feet, 79.2 feet, 85.4 feet, 85.1 feet, 91 feet, and 96 feet from a freshwater wetland where 100 foot is required and a variance of 30.6 feet is required from 255-1110 to construct a residence at a height of 28.6 feet where 25 feet is maximum allowed for a roof flat roof. Zoning district is A5 residence, VE flood zone, VE 17 flood zone, AE flood zone X Cobra zone, and the secret class is type 2. Member Maring, once again, it's your night.
Amagansett night. Thank you. Okay, another public hearing that was held on December 3rd, representing the applicant and presenting the application at the public hearing were a group of people that included Mark Turkel and Carl Smith of Leroy Street Studio Architects, Melissa Dedovich of, if I said that correctly, Peconic Environmental Associates, land use attorney Anthony Pasqua of Ethics Hefter et al., representative from Men at Work, and Ms. Karen Seidman Becker, the owner who acquired the property. I believe this was acquired in 2022, spoke on her own behalf. A number of other people were in the room as well. A whole team was assembled for this important application on this important site. No members of the public participated either at the public hearing or with any written comments into the record. At the end of the public hearing, we closed both the hearing and the record. To review just some basics about the property, the lot size, excluding seaward of the bluff crest, this is a buildable area, is 2.2 .26 acres or 98,450 square feet. The clearing calculations are based on a somewhat smaller lot size of 1.83 acres. There are various natural features that impact the lot, including, of course, the bluff crest along the Atlantic Ocean, wetlands that are not on the property, but are within jurisdiction on the sort of northeast and northwest, north of the northeast and northwest corners of the property. Those are freshwater wetlands, and as well as dune vegetation and dune land. This property sits in many important districts and designations. It's part of the Bluff Road Historic District. The parcel is the only residential lot that sits within 75 acres of reserve land that's managed by the Nature Conservancy. This parcel also sits within the Further Lane subunit of the East Hampton SAS. It sits close to, but not in, the Amagansett National Wildlife Refuge. That's a very special area. It sits within the broader Atlantic Double Dunes ecosystem, and in the New York State documentation, that's an area that's considered very unique and rare, and is also considered particularly vulnerable overall. The Atlantic Double Dunes, that whole area, is also a significant wildlife habitat area. The entirety of the parcel is also in a COBRA, otherwise known as a Coastal Barrier Resource Area. So all in, it was acknowledged by the applicant's agent, how very special and unusual is the siting of this project and this lot. Okay, in terms of the documents, the TAM was written by also by Morgan Slater. October 8th, 2024 is the date. The survey that we're using is dated November 20th, 2024. I'm not going to go through all the documents because they're quite big. There's a very significant landscaping, re-veg and landscaping plan from Grimes and Hollander. The Men at Work construction protocol, which is thorough, replaces what was in the file, which was done by Bulge and Associates. I won't go into all the other documents. As said, the project is to demolish the very non-conforming, pre-existing non-conforming house that was built in 1960, that I think is somewhere around 50 feet from the bluff crest. It's a 39, the GFA of the current house that will be removed is 3,926 square feet. It is not FEMA compliant, as mentioned. There's also an existing pool that is within jurisdiction of wetlands on the northwest part of the property. The new development proposed is 8,999 square feet, two-story house, 6 bedrooms. So that's an increase of GFA by a multiple of 2.3 times. There's a 1,470 square foot pool, and there's a garage, and all in combined, I added them up from the plans, it's 7,053 square feet combined of patios, terraces, walkways, and stairways. The building coverage for the new project expands or increases by 79% to, and it's about 20% from the max allowed, the theoretical max allowed, and total coverage all in actually reduces by a modest 6%. The existing clearing, the final clearing will be reduced 36% to 15,276. However, it is noted that during construction, there will be clearing in total of 43,746, and that's again, it will be redone, but that is a significant disturbance during the project. The variances have already been outlined. The applicant has characterized the necessary wetland variances as not being particularly substantial mathematically. It seems like a bit of a narrow take. The house at its nearest point to the wetland is 65.5 feet away from that wetland in the northwest side. However, the site plans, and especially when you look at the big revegetation plan documents, show that a very significant portion of the new structure, perhaps about 2/3 of the footprint and the mass of the new structure, will be within 100 feet from the wetland setback area, or will be less than 100 feet from the wetlands. The house, there are some, positives, well, there are many positives about part of this redevelopment. The house itself is pushed just outside of the VE zone into the AE zone. There's a small portion of the southernmost patio that pokes through the CHA line, but virtually the bulk of the new development is landward or north of the CHA line. There is a proposed 44,137 square foot scenic easement on the southern part in the VE17 zone going over the bluff crest. So I want to address the variance standards and talk through them a little bit. With respect to 255-8, let me back up. The TAM does make the statement, it is, quote, "it is possible that wetland setback could be maximized by a reduction in the size of the proposed residence." And during Mr. Pasqua's discussion of the variance standards, he didn't make the case that he didn't really address whether, it could be changed in size or to reduce or eliminate the wetland variances. He was very clear that this is the program that the applicant wants, and that I think he described it as the minimum that they'll accept, and without that, the project won't go forward. So I just want to go through the variance standards. 255-850D 1B, the area variance to be granted is the minimum variance necessary and adequate to alleviate the difficulty causing the applicant to request an area variance. Again, and then the second part of that standard 2, the applicant shall have the burden of showing that the variance requested is the minimum variance needed to alleviate. And I believe that was really not addressed, and this part of the standard is not being fully met because there were no other potential plans described and why they actually couldn't work to reduce the scope or the size of the variances. I want to go through the other standards. Sorry, I'm choking here. In terms of A, whether the grant of the variance will cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood. I'm struggling with this. Yes, it was discussed that it's really not a neighborhood like Neighbors, but this property does sit in the middle of all this incredibly fragile and important reserve land. And it's not clear to me, I can't definitively say, no, it won't cause a detriment to the habitat or the wildlife. Is the benefit sought by the applicant achieved by some other method feasible other than area variances? We don't think this was fully met. Do you think the requested area variances are substantial? The grant of the variance have an adverse effect on the physical environmental conditions in the neighborhood, and whether the difficulty causing the applicant is self-created, and I do believe it is self-created. There are positive environmental factors happening here. The retreat from the dune crest, which is required, the revegetation, the removal of invasive plants is very positive. And however, again, with the natural resources standards, are there alternative reasonable uses of the properties that are determined not to exist? Are there alternative designs entailing smaller buildings or structures? It's not clear that they've met that hurdle. Just to put my final point in context here, I thought about this application relative to two others that we've approved on, dune land properties, one out in the Napeague stretch, one up on Bendigo that was on Gardner's Bay. Both of those projects we approved, they were on larger properties, so the development was less significant relative to the lot size, and they were both designed without a need for variances. So I think that's an important standard. I don't find the position of drawing this hard line in the sand, that there were no other options than the minimum here. I think it was unfortunate to say it would be a loss for the town, a lose-lose situation. So all in, I am going to deny the variances as requested.
Okay.
Go.
Oh, Ed, you want to go?
And
Sure.
natural resource special permit as well?
Oh, yes, both of them.
Okay.
Sorry.
So you're
I was
denying the
focused really on
application in its
variances, but
entirety?
yes, sorry.
Okay, this was a large, long hearing with many working parts. We had great representation, a team from the client, from the applicant, and we covered a lot of ground. I want to begin by just talking about the difference between the existing house and the proposed structure. And much of this comes from what was produced by Leroy Street Studios for us as a comparison in various areas. Let me go through them, and this will influence my thinking. The existing house has 3,926 square feet of GFA. The habitable space for the existing structure also included 2,320 square feet of basement, which gave it 6,294 square feet of a 6-bedroom house of habitable space. The proposed house is 8,896 square feet. That's slightly variant from what was just introduced by Member Meering. It's Nichols. I'm not sure exactly where that discrepancy is, but just a few feet of habitable space, which has no basement. The proposal here is to remove an existing structure and to retreat from the double dunes landward with the new house. The move will move the new structure substantially behind the Seahall line, where the current structure is currently beyond that. Right now, the existing structure has 7,383 square feet of impervious surfaces seaward of the Seahall line. The proposed structure would still have 2,046 square foot seaward of the Seahall line, but it is a 3,438 square foot reduction. The existing total clearing is 24,059 square feet, with 15,047 seaward of the Seahall line. Moving it back would mean a 13,000-foot improvement from existing in terms of invasion above the Seahall line, beyond the Seahall line. In terms of total coverage, there is proposed to be a 1,524 square foot reduction. In terms of total clearing, there is an 8,783 square foot reduction in clearing, and that would be after the disturbance caused during construction had obviously been revegetated. In terms of the area of dune restoration, there is an area of 15,047 square feet, which will require 580 yards of fill based on their cut and fill estimate at this time. And in retreat from the top of the bluff, the new structure will achieve 140.9 lineal feet from the crest of the house and 119.9 feet for the deck. But the proposed building coverage will increase, as was mentioned, by 3,474 square feet, and that is a significant factor. Okay, one of the things that was just mentioned in general and observing both the print and the project as proposed is it will decrease the sprawl of the existing house and development in the new proposed finished project. I think there's a reduced visibility from the beach, which was a factor when we talked about SAS, and we talked also about impact on neighborhood. I know we read through Member Mearing read through the standards, and I'll do the same at the end, but I think that that's a factor for me that we did not get a proposal for something sitting at the top of the dune, which of course we would have probably not approved. But nonetheless, I think there's a certain sensitivity to the beachfront vista and that viewscape there. It was also mentioned that although we are looking for a pyramid variance here, that this proposed structure is 6.5 feet lower than the existing structure. Now, part of that has to do with how we consider roof lines, we can discuss later, but that is a factor in terms of its aesthetics and what it does and impact in the neighborhood for me. Some of the problem related to building height that's going to cause a pyramid variance is caused by the decision to move all the mechanicals from beneath the floors and place them between floors 1 and 2 so that there'll not be any mechanicals in the crawl space that's below grade. And that area between the 2 floors was, I couldn't find a cut on this, by the way, a section of what was proposed by Leroy Street, but they said that there would be a 3-foot sleeve, a corridor between floors where they would try to accommodate as much of the mechanicals for the entire project as possible. And in Drew Brandt's document, he proposed drainage swales in place of dry wells as being less destructive to this location, thinking that they would work well. He had some statistics that showed the seepage rate in sand and that he proposed that they'd work well. We've had these proposals from Mr. Bennett before, and I know we've approved some of them. It's a project, it's a possibility to me that it's a positive because I don't think that putting in a whole series of dry wells is an advantage in comparison to the swales. I think that the Man-at-W job protocol addressed several pertinent issues. And then Jim Kim came up and offered a plan to reduce on-site traffic. This is an important one for us. We know it's a 900-foot road. We know that that road is to be protected in its entirety. And I did mention that Hugh Bennett's site plan included all 900 feet of driveway to be fenced and the entire parcel to be fenced to protect it from anyone from getting out onto other adjacent lands, many of which are publicly owned. I thought that Bennett's site proposal was a good one. I think in general, the team made good presentations. Jim did offer to reduce on-site traffic by parking off-site and then bringing men on. And when challenged a little bit about that, said he has a protocol that seems to work in the past. We'll hope that's going to work here because this is a very sensitive area for having massive traffic up and down that road for any length of time. I think the scenic easement was offered to help protect the primary dune. I think that was a positive. And I think they agreed on minor things to change bluestone driveways to quartz driveways. I think that both aesthetically and architecturally an effort is made to have the house blend in with sandstone type exterior where there is the stone to be shown. And it's more in concert with the dune environment. I will say, however, that there are other factors here in terms of how the house will present itself. I appreciate the overall design, and I think it's a laudable effort to retreat and revegetate and redesign the residence, pulling it back from the dunescape, which is something that the town is, down from the double dune, which is something the town has tried to encourage, that retreat mentality. The overall size of the proposed structure is excessive, and I'll agree with that. That was something that was brought up by Member Mearing, and I think it was a very good point. This is an almost 9,000 square foot house. When that was brought up, and this was also mentioned by Member Mearing, that the representative from Leroy Street said, well, this is a breaking point for them. If they have to do a smaller house, they'll abandon the project. That's not so much our problem. Our problem is to decide whether or not this house fits in the area and whether we can prove it. I think there's a lot of glass there when you look at the elevations, and that's something that is, we can talk about how that affects the environment and how it affects not only the environment, but the compatibility with the neighborhood. Is this a house that belongs there in this historic district? I think, though, however, in my mind, that the positives for the project outweigh the negatives. I very much respect the position that Member Meering took, and I think it's one for careful consideration. But when I do the balance of looking of the house retreating from where it is now up on the dune and very vulnerable to a new area, the way in which the sprawl has been contained, and many of these other factors that I mentioned. And when I went through the standards, I had a slightly different take on some of these. I won't read all of them, but whether or not the grant of the variance is an undesirable change to the character of the neighborhoods, this is 255-850. I don't think it will. I think that it is, while it's in a historic area, although it doesn't have the designation, I think it's an historic area. I think that there's a certain compatibility potential with this architectural design with the dunes that will not make it have a jarring presence there. And whether the benefits of the applicant will be achieved by another or pursue another other than this area variance, I'm not sure. I think this is an argument can be made about the size of the house, but for me, I'm willing to accept that. And whether the area variance is substantial, one of the things that was brought up by Member Meering was that the location relative to the new project to the northern wetlands, and I think that the representatives for the applicant that night said that they had to make a choice between retreat from the double dune and encroachment on the wetlands, which was the more important and which had the longest long-term effect environmentally, and what would the town prefer. I think I would side with the idea that the retreat is more significant than moving within 70 feet of the wetlands. I don't know that there is a great answer for choosing one over the other. But in this case, I'm willing to make that decision. And as far as the other standards, I did not find one that jumped out at me and made me say I shouldn't approve it. I will say with a certain amount of, what should I say? With a certain amount of feeling that the house could have been smaller. Nonetheless, I think it's a project that has been, it's got an overall design and an overall approach and a significant amount of compensation for the things we are looking for, that I will disagree with Member Meering, and I am willing to approve this application.
Thank you. Denise?
Well, I too agree with, I actually think this project was very well done. I think it should actually be the template for development on properties that contain barrier dunes, secondary dunes, and beach vegetation. There are a lot of time and effort went in, and they had a wonderful team. They submitted a construction protocol that addresses all my concerns about the natural features. There are so many pluses. I will go into them. There's a robust scenic easement going over the bluff crest. Their new house is entirely seaward of the Seahawk line. There's an extensive rebuilding of the dune with revegetation that eliminates non-native plant species and allows for reestablishment of a dune habitat. They're updating their sanitary system to an IA. I think the design of the house to be a flat roof will not affect the character of the historic district at all, because there will be no visibility and no real negative effects. The house will be FEMA compliant. There's a reduction in clearing on the site from 24,059 square feet to 15,276 square feet. The reduction includes reducing the clearing seaward of Seahawk from 15,047 to 2,046. I too really extensively went through everything, and I think the proposal will substantially increase the amount of revegetation on the property. You're replacing the outdated sanitary system. There's going to be an on-site stormwater recharge. I think that every effort has been made here to meet the natural resource special permits, and I do not believe these variances are substantial. I'd also like to read into the record a letter we received from the ARB, Chip Ray, the chair, where he also notes the applicant has proposed a sophisticated modern design that is lower in elevation, pulled back from the southernmost dune crest, and seeks to defer the primacy of the dune landscape more than the existing house. They appear to have embraced the environmental requirements of dune and vegetative restoration as an integral aspect of the design. As I stated earlier, I think this should be the template for design on properties that are constrained like this, and for all the reasons I've stated, I'm approving this application in its entirety.
Thank you. Sir?
This is a brutal application.
Brutal what?
Application. Brutal for my decision on it. Okay, I think the application was well presented. I was not that thrilled before the hearing, looking at the documents. I do think that the documentation we received from Peconic Environmental on November 26th, at the hearing, they addressed all the items in the TAM that had been mentioned, and all the subsequent documents that came in on November 26th had me feeling much better about things like construction protocol, huge 900-foot, and protecting the wetlands that did exist, plus the revegetation, the restoration of the dune. There's a long list of things that I feel were very good environmentally. And in the TAM, in the TAM, it was stated that the project appears to support the managed retreat and accommodate strategies that are described in the town's CARP plan, relocating existing structures that are at risk. So it appears to me that, and the document, the house itself being less sprawling, the thing that bothers me most, two things. I don't like the height variance. I don't like the flat roof with the roof deck and the glass rail. And I think that the house, I do think that alternate designs can be a factor, and the scale of this house is very large. I'm definitely torn on this. In one way, it competes, the fact that the total lot coverage comes down a little bit, and the scenic easement protecting the entire area from the where the original house is and that whole dune structure. It's all a positive. Now, I don't know if I could do this, but I'm leaning toward approving part of it, but not the height variance for the height. And I think NRSP-wise, it's a good project. I think there are a lot of improvements, and it is following the town's future in resilience and sustainability that we're looking to get in protecting the shorelines and our dune structures. But the 25-foot, the height variance is very bothersome to me. The flat roof with the roof deck and glass rails. There's a lot of glass on this house. Glass walls, and I don't see that as an environmental plus. We know migrations of wildlife and birds in particular that occur at the lights, and the glass are killing our wildlife as they migrate across. So I'm going to approve the project, but not the height variance.
So just get this clear, the nexus for not approving the height is you don't like it?
No, it's because it's exceeding the flat roof. I think they could consolidate.
How does it affect this? I'm just going through this. How does it affect the standards? You didn't go through the standards on that.
Well, it's on the NRSP
Does
side.
it affect
I think
the character of the neighborhood?
well, the character of the neighborhood here, that house is the neighborhood. Like there really is no other neighborhood.
All right, I'll go on.
Go ahead.
In the 1980s, the town in its wisdom undertook a bold step to protect its natural resources. One of the primary reasons or viewpoints that they had in doing that is the dune structure that we have in this town, as well as wetlands, shoreline. This is a unique property in that it exists, all of them, all of them exist here. In summation, there's an existing house on the primary dune that's being demolished, that's being retreated. This is a retreat project. And I think it's extremely well done. I will pay particular attention to the memorandum of law that was written by Pasca, dated 11/25/24. And in it, he sets out 3 points. 1.1, the proposed redevelopment of the subject property meets the standards set forth in the town code for a natural resources special permit. The second point is the applicant's proposed redevelopment of the project property meets the standards set forth in the town code for requested variances. And 3, the point, applicant's project will provide a significant environment improvement to the property. It is in the case where an applicant comes to us, they have the burden of the proof. I think this applicant proved that they do meet the standards. The TAM does talk briefly about the size of the building, but I'm going to read a couple of things from the TAM that it seems like some of the other members didn't read, but I will bring that. I would just want to go through. Give me a second. Okay, so it says in the TAM, the redevelopment of the property appears to be slightly less sprawling than the existing conditions, which is reflected by the 1,524 square foot decrease in total lot coverage. The residence and associated structures are proposed in the northwest corner of the property, so most wetland setback variances are from the smaller wetland to the northwest of the proposed structure, meaning that, and the applicant was very specific on how they situated this piece of property and would rather you get closer to the north west wetland, which is a smaller wetland than the big cranberry bog to the northeast. I think that is very environmentally conscious in doing that. And then in summation, the TAM says this: apart from the overall scale of the residence, the landward relocation of structures and reestablishment of dune land in areas that have had lawn or ornamental vegetation for decades provides an improvement to the environmental conditions of the property. Adhering to a strict construction protocol should be prioritized to protect the surrounding wetlands and duneland from unnecessary disturbance during the demolition of the existing residence and the construction of the new residence. I believe this application does meet all the standards for natural resources. It does meet the standards for variances. I agree with my vice chair that this is a model application, and I applaud this application and the team put together. With that, I'm approving the application.
Can I add one more thing that's also in the TAM? It states that the proposed project appears to support the town's managed retreat and accommodate strategies described in CARP. And this was one of the reasons I was leaning toward approval, which involve relocating existing structures that are at risk of flood inundation to more upland areas and the construction of a more resilient structure. So I think that's very relevant too in terms of the positiveness of the project.
Council, we good? All right, thank you. Next we go on, we have building permit, certificate of occupancy, Zwerko 11 and 15 Shore Drive. Do we have that C of O inspection? Do we have that tonight on the?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I have,
So we had the extension of time, but the.
It's both. Both are on.
Okay, both are on.
We
So
can do both
Tyler,
at
you'll
once.
walk us through it then.
Sure. So
Good night, guys.
the CO inspection, essentially, we're okay with the CO inspection. The only thing to note is that the building coverage and the total lot coverage and clearing are slightly different than what the board approved. Mainly the building coverage is what's important, because it was slightly more than what was on the approval, so we wanted to bring it to you just to make sure it was okay. Ultimately, the building coverage is 83 square feet larger than what was on the approved survey. That could be any number of reasons, like the overhangs are slightly different or something like that, or they didn't include the overhangs at the original time. But so building coverage or lot coverage is 83 square feet over. However, total lot coverage is 1,115 square feet less than approved, and clearing is 2,819 square feet less than approved.
So you're seeing a net improved.
So yeah, so a significant improvement on everything except for building coverage, which is a small amount larger.
Anybody have any
We wanted
questions?
to bring it to the board just because it was slightly larger.
no, I don't have
Anybody
any
have any
questions.
questions or concerns?
No.
None.
Thank you.
And then they're also on for an extension of time. But obviously they're ready for their CO, so.
Do we need a motion for that? For the council?
For the extension of time, no?
We need one for the extension of time, which we're going to do next, but
We usually just write a letter, so I don't think so. We'll just
okay.
go ahead and write the
For the
letter.
C of O.
Usually the variances in the planning department can just do this without having
Yeah,
to
yeah,
come back
yeah.
to the board.
Yeah.
but I think we're okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it, yeah.
Next is the extension of time. So this is the extension of time, 11 and 15 Shore Drive West, Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-108-2-4.2, so that they can close out the C of O.
Yes.
So we have a motion to,
Yes, of course. In the matter of Zwerko 11 and 15 Shore Drive West, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-108-2-4.2, I make a motion to approve the extension of time as requested.
I'll second.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur, thank you. Next, we have draft minutes,
Yeah,
December 10th and December
10th and
17th.
17th. Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeal for
Yeah.
December 10th, 2024.
I'll second. Okay, I'll
Concur.
concur.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from December 17th for the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals.
I'll second.
Concur.
Concur,
Are we ready to adjourn?
yes.
And I would like to make a motion to adjourn the zoning board of appeals meeting on January 7th, 2025 at 8:42 PM.
I'll second it.
Concur.
Concur.
Thank you.